Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Welcome to our talk this week. The topic is Jagged Lines. No one breaks on purpose. And it's based on the essay that I published a couple of days ago. And the essay is a little bit different. It's a little bit of a departure than my usual essays because it's more abstract, less linear is the best way I can put it. And because the essay was a little different this week, and it also seemed to really hit people, I got an overwhelming amount of just beautiful comments from people who this resonated with and who felt really connected to the material. So just had me thinking about what happened this week and kind of why it felt different or why I was writing in a different way. And we're all human beings, and I talk about this a lot, but we're energetic creatures. We're absorbing energy, we're emitting energy, and I read a lot. I'm a big reader, and some of the things I read this week, and I just want to kind of put a little note up here at the top that I'm such a big believer in calling it out when people inspire you. And I don't know what the fear is around that, especially women supporting other women. There's no one will ever take your place in the sun. There's only one you, and you're going to express yourself in a way that only you can and only you will. So you lose nothing at all by shining a light on other people who inspire you. And this week, some of those people, I'm lucky enough, the fates aligned, whatever happened, that Danny Shapiro is one of my really, really close friends, and she and I exchanged some texts, and even Danny's texts are amazing. If you haven't read Signal Fires yet, definitely want to put that on your must-read list. And Lauren Huff is one of my favorite writers, and she's got a memoir called Leaving Isn't the Hardest Thing, and a Substack called Bad Reads, which I subscribe to, highly recommend. And she wrote an essay this week called Bomb City. And I also read Joanne Beard's The Fourth State of Matter, which is one of the most beautiful essays I've ever read. It's just so artful. And she's just writing about the unthinkable. So all of these things were kind of Maggie Smith, poet. She's got a beautiful memoir, You Could Make This Place Beautiful, but she was writing about line breaks in poetry and where you put the break and how where you put the break affects the meaning and the way it's landing. So all of these things were kind of spinning around in my brain this week. And when it came time to write the essay, which I wanted to do on the earlier side, because I had a medical procedure on Wednesday, so I wanted to write Monday and Tuesday, all of these things were kind of spinning around in my mind and certainly had an effect on the essay that came out of my brain. And because it's a little bit more abstract, I can clearly tell you the topics are motherhood, mother loss, mother rage, what gets passed down. So not just genes, but also those sort of psychic breaks that your mother may have gone through when you were growing. When that break occurred, I think that for many people, certainly many of the people that this resonated with, there's this common feeling of, at some point in my life, I started to think I might be broken in some way, in some sort of at my core, that I might be unlovable, that there might be something really unfixable about me. And some of my life's work really has been in identifying like where that happened and when that occurred. And it might not always be easy for everyone to pinpoint. For me, it's pretty easy because everything sort of exploded the week before I turned 4 and the weeks after. My maternal grandmother died. She was my mother's best friend. My mother and father had been sort of keeping their marriage going that last year of my grandmother's life for her sake. She had cancer, she was dying, and my mother did not want her mother to worry about her or me and what was going to happen after the divorce, which was impending. So the week after my grandmother died, my dad left. And I very clearly remember at 4 coming out of my room and walking into the living room and seeing my mother, who was always moving. She was always moving, cleaning, doing, sitting by herself at the dining room table. The lights were not on. It was daytime, so there was daylight, but she was just kind of sitting in a darkened room by herself, staring at nothing. And that just was not my mother at all. And that is really the moment where I think everything in my life changed on a dime, because my mother was broken. She just lost her mother, and I now know what that is and what that feels like when you lose your mother. And she and her mother had a much less complicated relationship than I had with my mother. My mother and her mother were best friends. My grandmother was around. I called her Nanny. She was around every day of my life before she got really ill. And so for my mother to lose her was very much like the ground falling out. And for my dad to leave that next week, I mean, there's no way that she was in any position to take care of me or herself. And so she ended up taking me to a friend of hers I'd never met before, who had a farm outside the city. And I stayed with that woman and her daughter for a length of time I'll never know. I could never ask my mother how long I was at the farm, because that's the kind of conversation that would have enraged her. Something that had happened in the past. Why does it matter? Are you sort of judging me? It was all that stuff. So I don't know, but to me, it felt endless. It could have been a long weekend. It could have been a week. It could have been a month. I don't know. I never will know. But for me, I do remember feeling like everyone had disappeared. My mother was gone. My father was gone. My nanny was gone. My aunt and uncle, who I'd spent so much time with in my childhood, I don't know why she didn't take me there. I think she must have felt some shame about the divorce and just not being able to mother me right then. So I didn't go there, which certainly would have been better. So I can remember just feeling totally like everyone is gone, and the panic. Like, I remember that, even though I was so little. And so it's easy for me to kind of figure out where the break occurred and what happened, but I don't think it's always so easy. Anyway, because the essay is so different than what I normally write, or maybe it's not so different, but it's different enough, I feel like the podcast is going to be a little different this week, and I'm going to start it by reading the essay. I don't know for sure that everybody who listens to the podcast reads the essays, so I'm just going to read it because I think it'll be a good starting off point, and it'll make the conversation flow more organically. There are a couple of curses in it that I'm going to just kind of bleep myself because it's a podcast, and I don't know if your little people are going to be in the car or you're doing laundry or whatever it is. I also don't want to put an explicit tag on the podcast because it's really not explicit, so I'm just going to bleep those couple of words out. There's only 2 of them. So here we go, and I'm going to put my readers on, and you'll notice they are not frameless. And I'm going to just move over a little bit so I can see this and read it. So here we go. Jagged lines. No one breaks on purpose. How far back in time do you have to go to find the thing that broke inside you? I knew I knew the day I found my mother sitting alone at the dining room table, staring at nothing, that something had broken inside her. I knew, even though I was only 4, that more than genes passed down, because when she broke, I broke too. Maybe it's like fine china, like a jagged line that cracked down the center of her, and because I was holding her hand, it just continued down the center of me too. Me too. They say that when a husband leaves his wife, he leaves his children also, even if he just moves down the block, even if he never actually leaves them, even if he's at all the games and recitals. I don't know about that, but I know something broke in my mother when her mother died and my father left, all in 1 week, and it was just the 2 of us standing there, stunned. My mother at 28, with everything she thought she knew in pieces, without her mother to help her figure out the next right step, and me at 4, holding her hand and looking up at her, needing her to have all the answers. I know that when I tried to fix her in all the years that followed, it broke me more and made me feel I wasn't enough, and worse, that I was stupid to think I might have been enough. I know that later, way later, I was drawn toward people who made me feel the same way. Stupid to think I might have been enough. Can you really fix a break if it began inside someone else? If I glue myself together, but the thing that caused the break is still in rageful pieces, will I ever be whole, healed, shiny, strong? I wasn't strong in my teens. When that guy grabbed me in the stairwell, I fought and got away, but I wasn't so lucky the next time. My no was meaningless, and the fact that I'd said no was meaningless too. Even my mother didn't believe me, so what can you do? Even my mother didn't believe me. How can you not be broken further? She knew I was not ready for the world. She must have known, but she threw me to the wolves anyway, because she figured I'd have to learn how to fight my own battles eventually, or because she didn't know how to save me, or because she thought maybe the best thing she could give me was her rage, like some kind of twisted shield I would turn outward instead of inward. I should have been fighting those battles with my own father. He might have been, probably was, certainly was the cause of the break. He makes me sicker than any of the guys that came after, because he should have cared, and he should have known better. He was pushing 50 when he made me his confidant. What 50-year-old man sobs in the arms of a 4-year-old and thinks that's normal or okay? I should have mattered to him, but no one mattered to him more than he mattered to himself. So I was shattered instead and trained at the knee of a man who taught me, all the men matter, and all the girls should be gorgeous and skinny, with big breasts and small asses and a sweet smile, ready to help. Rest in peace, Dad. If you're a 27-year-old man and a 14-year-old child has a crush on you, your job is to walk, run away. You would think this goes without saying, but you'd be wrong. This happened right under my mother's nose at a restaurant she managed during the day and you managed at night. I guess you want to congratulate yourself because you didn't let things go too far. But I am now the mother of a 14-year-old daughter, and I can tell you with absolute confidence and disgust, anywhere at all was too far, and you are nothing more than a pig with a red Camaro, though you probably drive a different car today. My mother sent me out on a date with you for my 15th birthday because she thought my crush on you was cute. I guess she thought she could trust you. I guess she thought you were her friend. You, me, we go out into the world and we're taught the same lessons over and over again. I remember that oppressive office with the pipe smoke and your smug tone telling me at 16 how I was turning your history department upside down. Question: how are you paid to be the head of a department? How is that your job description when you blame a 16-year-old for the outrageous behavior of the grown men you hired? Allow me to say now, F you, sir. I had no words to defend myself. No way to say, you're talking to the wrong person. Because there I was, 16 and mortified, and there you were with your beard and the patches on your jacket elbows and your stupid pipe like you were some exalted scholar, some big shot member of the academia instead of some nobody at a tiny private school known for catering to rich, not very bright students. God, I'd like to kick you in the nuts, and I'm not violent, and you're probably dead or close to it. I didn't even tell my mom about you, because what would the point have been? She probably would have taken your side. I don't know how you go out into the world as a girl and have any hope at all if your mother is unavailable to you, whatever the reason. Maybe you get lucky and you have a strong aunt or your mother's best friend steps in. Mother loss is real, and it leaves a gaping hole full of all the things you absolutely need to know. And mother loss is harder to comprehend, but certainly not harder to face, when your mother is there but not there, or sometimes there but usually not, or when Chardonnay is a higher priority than you. Maybe you've noticed I'm calling all of these guys you, and that's because they're all the same dude and they don't matter. They don't get a name in my story. You who called me a replaceable hole and then sent me a friend request on Facebook years later. You who told me I wasn't hot enough for you and you thought you'd end up with a supermodel. You who lied about every last thing. You who kept treasures from my childhood you swore you'd return. You who didn't get in the line of fire to protect me. You who took advantage. You who doesn't understand the sacrifices I made for you but stands in judgment of me now. You who took what you wanted even when I begged you to stop. Begged you. Some of you actually are the same person, and none of it matters because I have an answer to one question, and it's probably the only one that matters. We go back in time as far enough as we need to figure out when and where the break happened, and then we do whatever we need to do to put ourselves back together. We stop moving toward people who like to live inside our jagged lines and chip away at them, cruelty by cruelty, and we head toward the ones who think the brokenness makes us more beautiful, more wise, more full of empathy. The ones who can see how hard we work to get strong, to find our voice, to say no when we need to and yes when we want to. The ones who understand no matter how hard we fought and how strong we are, we still need and deserve to be treated with care, with some tenderness. I recognize at some point or another that I have grown into a wild woman who has tried to prepare her daughter for this world and who is ready to roar on her behalf at any moment, and that I've raised a son who will never break anyone because he doesn't have it in him. He is not made of that hardened, toxic stuff. I recognize my mother's broken pieces are part of what made her, her, and me, and I forgive her for them. I gather them together when she can't anymore. I sweep them up and carry them safely in my heart, in a little corner that's the shape of the words, "It's okay, Mom. I understand now." There is no me without my mother, and for all the things she wasn't, there were so many things she was. She was fierce and frightening if you crossed her. She was calculating when she needed to be. She found a way to keep a roof over our heads when no one else was there to do it. She was funny, and she could be really kind and generous, occasionally to me, always to her friends. She lit up a room. She was not to be trifled with. And no one breaks on purpose. So that's the essay that kind of poured out of me this week, and those are all the topics I wanted to kind of dive into today. And I think one of the biggest ones is just that complicated mother-daughter relationship, which I think a lot of people relate to. And, I loved my mother. I mean, I loved her like so ferociously, and I just wanted her. I wanted her attention, I wanted her love, I wanted her affection, I wanted her praise, her approval, and I just couldn't get it. It's just the way her life went and the things that happened. I do think, and I have come to think, and I I thought for a very long time, and I feel even more assured of it now, that on some subconscious level, and maybe it wasn't that far underneath the surface, she blamed me for the end of her marriage to my dad. And I think that there was a rage there, like a genuine rage, that I don't think she ever reckoned with. I don't think she ever got her arms around it. And so she began drinking when I was 8. And when she would drink, she would unleash her rage on me. And I didn't understand any of this. All I knew is that my mother, whom I loved, was turning on me. And this woman who was so beautiful, my mother was really stunning by anyone's standards, her face would become twisted and just like a wild animal, about to strike. And it was terrifying. She scared me. She came after me, both physically, she overpowered me physically and emotionally. It was really rough, and it went on for my entire childhood, and I just couldn't understand what was wrong with me, and why she didn't love me. And I really thought there was something broken in me at my core, something that made me just really unlovable if even my own mother couldn't love me. And I thought that for a long time. It took me a lot of work to understand, oh, that's not it. She was the one who was broken, like her inability to be loving and be consistently kind to me and be there for me. And, that was her brokenness, not mine. It's a reflection of where she was at. And I think that there was something about the fact that I was her daughter and that I still had my father. She didn't have him anymore, but I did. She just didn't understand the nature of the relationship I was having with him, which was completely inappropriate. He was unloading all of his very grown-up man problems on my little shoulders, his commitment issues and his commitment phobia and his massive infidelities and constant cheating, and giving me a front row seat to all that stuff and involving me in his lies and getting me to cover for him. I mean, it was just, there was nothing healthy about what was happening there, but she didn't know because she wasn't with us, they were divorced. And when you are a girl heading out into this world, and I want to think and I want to hope that it's changing and shifting, and I certainly want to hope that, since I have my own daughter, my own 14-year-old daughter, as it would happen. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I wrote this essay and that a lot of rage came to the surface. It's still set up so that, if you don't have your mother there in your corner kind of guiding you and walking next to you quietly or just behind you, making sure nothing untoward is going to happen to you, nothing, as best I can. I can't be with my daughter 24/7, but I have prepared her. I have told her, and I don't want to scare her, and I don't want her to walk through the world looking over her shoulder, but I want her to be prepared, and I want her to know what to do and to get loud if anyone comes at her in any way that is threatening or that makes her feel uncomfortable or unsure or just a little bit off. I want her to know, to get loud and to come to me right away, or to go to the nearest grown-up right away and get the help. And she does know. She's a little warrior, my kid. She's just got great self-esteem, and she's got her eyes open, and I mean, she's as prepared as any of us can be. And still I can't know that everything is going to be okay, because that's the world we live in. And if you are a man, you might not know that. And I mean that genuinely. You might not know what it feels like to walk down a street at night and there's no one else on the block, and there's a man walking behind you 30 feet, 40 feet, and you're wondering, am I safe? Do I need to get my keys out and put them between my fingers and make a fist? Do I need to be carrying pepper spray? Or what, am I okay? there have been so many times, and I wrote about just some of them. That's not even all of them, that I wrote about this week, but times where I was overpowered by men in the world and had no resources to deal with it or to protect myself or to fight back. And, there was one time in particular that I'm not going to get into too much right now because, again, I don't know who's listening. I don't know if you have small children around or, but I'm writing about it in my memoir. And there's a time where I was overpowered and my mother didn't believe me later, and that was probably, of all the things that happened, that was probably the one that put a real dagger into my heart. Like I needed her support. I certainly needed her to believe me. I needed her to not question whether I was telling the truth or not. I needed her to go to bat for me, and she just didn't. She didn't believe me, and it was brutal. It was almost as bad as the thing that happened, and maybe worse in some ways, because what a stranger does to you is what a stranger does to you, but your mother is your mother, and I know she did regret that. Years later, she apologized to me, which my mother really was not one to apologize ever. I think that might have been the only apology I ever got. But unfortunately, by then, years had gone by and the damage was done. I needed her then. And it's not about forgiving or not forgiving. It's just the damage was done. There was a lot of damage done. And so that's part of what I, really wanted to touch on this week, is what it is when you don't feel protected in this world. You don't feel safe. You don't feel secure. And you don't know who to go to or whether you're going to be believed. The power structures are such that you are afraid if you speak up, you're going to be vilified. And 9 times out of 10, you're right to worry. And it's painful. It's a painful place to be, to feel powerless or to feel unsure about who you can trust or where you can go for that support. And I think it's important for, everyone to understand this, because if you are a man and you go out into the world, let me say this, if you're a white man and you go out into the world, you're going to feel safe most of the time. That is not the case if you're a black man going out into the world or, anyone else. But if you are a white man going out into the world, you're probably going to feel safe. Probably. All right, wait, let's change that again. A straight white man, then you're probably going to feel safe in most arenas. And that's not the case for everyone else. And I think it's important to know that, I think it's important to make sure everyone understands that, because how could you know if you didn't know? If you didn't experience it yourself, how would you know? And anyone who deviates in any way from that is less safe. And that's just the world that we're in. And it's like that analogy of like what the water that you're swimming in. If you are a straight white man, you're swimming in some pretty safe waters. So you might say to yourself, the water's safe. What's everybody freaking out about? Well, the water's safe for you. It's not safe for everyone. And, I certainly try to be aware of my status, and my privilege in this world, and to make sure that anyone who is not as fortunate, like I'm thinking about how things are for them too. When I went to the hospital a few weeks ago because I was feeling chest pain, I got unbelievable care. There was no question, all the tests were done, all the things were done. That might not have been the case for a woman of color or anyone else, who isn't as fortunate as I am. So it's like, it's important to understand the water that you're swimming in is not the water that everyone is swimming in. And I think that for girls in this world and, young women, and that's all I can speak to with any sort of like expert knowledge, because I lived that. But there are obviously other people who have other perspectives that are equally valid and worthy and need to be heard. I can tell you, absolutely, it's it's a painful thing to try to figure out how to maneuver in this world and how to keep yourself safe. And if you don't have a mother to help you and to school you, right, to teach you, it becomes increasingly more difficult. And maybe you're going to have some other stand-ins. I was lucky in that as I grew, there were certain teachers. I was talking about the head of the history department and in my high school, and there were some just, the behavior of the men in that department was just ridiculous and not okay. But there was a woman in the department. She was amazing, and I loved her, and she was extremely helpful. And there was another female teacher in my school who told me that I could skip my senior year and told me how to do it. She kind of helped me get out of there, get out of Dodge. And I was having trouble in both households, and she knew that. I was having a hard time at my mom's because of the drinking and the gaslighting, the inability, the unwillingness, maybe it was an inability too, but the unwillingness for anyone in the household to deal with her alcoholism. And at my dad's, I couldn't, at 13, I was like, do not talk to me about your personal problems anymore. I'm not listening to that. And he then basically didn't know how to talk to me at all. And so the two houses were they just were painful places to be. And she came to me and said, you have enough credits, you could actually leave after your junior year. And that's what I did. And I ended up going to Barnard College, which is also where she went at Columbia University. She kind of just gave me a roadmap. So there are women that came along and helped me. And I could not be more, in fact, Lori Seminara, there you go, she's my science teacher. She really helped me. Jane Connell, my English teacher, a lot of these, and Jean Hauk, my history teacher, like a lot of these women stepped up to the plate, and got in my ear and said, like, you don't have to do this by yourself. And you need that. We all need that. If it's not going to be your mom because she can't or she won't, or, she's got an addiction issue or she's not here, whatever it is, like, we need a community of strong women walking behind us. If you are a girl or a woman in this world, whomever your community is, you really need your peers. You need people who have walked the road in front of you a little bit to circle back and hold your hand when you need that, or get behind you or roar for you when you haven't found your own roar. And so that's really what I, was writing about this week, and also like forgiveness and compassion, because I do understand now, and it's an interesting thing, but my mom died at the very end of 2021, and the grief I felt for the year after was so intense and so enormous and so overpowering. Like I was just fighting every day to keep my head above water, and some days I just managed to get up high enough to like gasp for breath, but one thing that has really surprised me is that the relationship continues to evolve. Even though she is not here on this planet with me anymore, our relationship continues to evolve. And that's something actually Dani Shapiro said to me when I lost my mom. She was like, one thing you probably don't know yet is like it's going to keep growing and changing. And she was 100% correct. It does. It's the way that you think about things, the way that as you get older, you understand your mother in a different way than you did, before you reached the age that you are. And so my perspective keeps shifting and shifting. And now that I have been through the loss of my own mother, I can understand at 28, going through that as a single mom with a 4-year-old, like, good luck, like really, my heart, I wish I could just like go back in time and be her friend through that, because that's just a lot. It's a lot of loss at once. And I think my dad really broke her heart. And I think losing her mother, I know, broke her heart. And, it's really painful. And so I have a lot more
compassion for her than I did when I was like 16, 20, trying to understand why she hadn't been better to me and why she hadn't been kinder to me. And I think now, as a grown woman, it's not that I'm excusing it. My heart goes out to my younger selves too, who were so confused, and certainly my self-esteem was really badly affected. But I get it now in a different way. Like, I really think she just didn't have the tools, and I think she was too proud. I think there were people in her life she could have leaned on more and asked for help, but I think she was too proud. And I think she was like that for her whole life, because even the last year of her life, she got ALS out of nowhere, not the genetic kind. And, she didn't want anybody to know. She didn't tell a lot of her friends. She didn't for a long time, till the very end, till it was like, she really couldn't speak anymore. That's when she started telling her her very closest friends knew, but even just like that inner circle, she was texting with people. She could text, but she couldn't speak. So she was just avoiding phone calls, and she was avoiding getting together in person. And, she was still doing real estate up until sort of the last several months of her life. She just couldn't do it anymore, but she wasn't going to the open houses. She wasn't doing the showings anymore. She was doing the behind the scenes stuff. So she kept it quiet for a really long time, because she wasn't one to ask for help. And she didn't, of course, my mother was someone who always looked perfect. That was really important to her. It's just a good little reminder for people that if you spend a lot of time trying to make everything look good on the outside, try to shift that, because it's the least meaningful thing about you, and it's the first thing that's going to go. And so she didn't lean on people the way that she could have. And I can only assume that if she wasn't able to do that in her 70s, she certainly wouldn't have been able to do it in her 20s. So I think she didn't ask for the help that she needed. And my heart goes out to her. That's all. My heart goes out to her, and I just understand in a way that I couldn't have 30 years ago, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Like, I gaining new insight all the time. And there's something really healing about that as well. And of course, also about parenting my own children the way I wish I had been parented. There's something healing about that as well. And if you don't have children and you don't want children, or you want children but you don't have children, or whatever, there are going to be children in your life. And I just want you to know that all of us can have a huge impact on the children around us. If you see one of your kids' friends who looks like they're struggling, or you have nieces or nephews, or just to be that person that is a safe place to come and talk. I have really made it my goal to parent that way, so that my kids talk to me about everything. And that means making it safe for your kids to come and talk to you about everything, and not, it doesn't mean like not setting boundaries, but it just means not being punitive and not being judgmental, and just really trying to listen with an open heart and open ears, and to be there. So that, I hope that, this was helpful to you. If you are dealing with a complicated relationship with your mom, or if you've lost your mother, or if you know about this sort of mother rage that can get passed down, I do think in my mother's case, like, she didn't know how to save me. And I don't think she had the tools to help me or teach me, or, like, get in there with me, have my back. My mother, unfortunately, a lot of the time would go for my jugular. It was rough. But if you are able to do that for someone, don't hesitate. And I think that's why I started this podcast, by just calling out just some of the people who inspire me. It means a lot when you are another light in the path along the way at any time in life. Now I'm 52, I'm going to be 53. It's like, I want my community. I need that. I need my peers. I need my people. I need other writers. Like, I need all of that, so that I've got a crew. I've got people, and it's important. And so just those little reminders. And I'm always, around to talk, to, if you leave a comment, I always do my best to respond. I'm always here to be a light along the way if at all possible. So thank you so much for joining me for this talk, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye for now.